Next up, we're going to try and bring all of the features that we've used so far together to make a product. Okay. Now, one of the products that I like to make after we've explored the features that we have done is the iPhone 5, and I'll explain why in a moment. Okay. So if I open it up so that I've just got an image there that I can review. So if I click open image in new tab, I've got that view, and I tell you what, I'll take this one here as well. Open image in new tab. So I've got two images of iPhones that I can use. Okay, so to bring up a new product, or to start making a new product, I should say, if I click on OnShape up in the top, that'll take me back to the dashboard at the start. Now, because I'm creating an entirely new product, document and give your product a name. So actually with iPhone, it's lowercase I, capital P. Again, I'm just going to put my initials on the end. So if I press OK, that'll bring me into a new work area, and all I should see is just those three planes in the center of the page. So at this stage, you want to think about how you want to orientate your product. How do you want it to appear? Do you want it to be standing up, or do you want it to be lying on a table? So if I wanted it to be lying on a table, I would start drawing the product on top. Instead, I want to have the product standing up, so I'm going to click on front and double click on front, because that's the way that I'd like to draw. Imagine yourself drawing on a table. I want to be drawing it in bird's eye view or plan view. So if I click on sketch, center point rectangle, and drag out till I've got roughly the proportions of an iPhone 5. Now at this stage, it would probably be helpful if I just do a very quick search for iPhone 5 dimensions. I'm not going to get it absolutely spot on, but if I try and find, okay, so I'm working in metric, so I can see the height is 123.8, width 58.6, and then I've got the depth of 7.6. Okay, so I may round these figures up to 124 and 59. So if I go back to my drawing, click on the dimension tool at the top. So if I hover over it, it'll tell me what it is. Click on the outer edge. I believe that was 124. Press enter, because my memory fails me. Okay, so we'll go with 59, we'll round up. Now, if you were making, let's say, an iPhone case, and you wanted to make it absolutely accurate, obviously you'd use accurate dimensions, but for this, just because we're creating a mock-up, I'm just going to go with rounded up dimensions. Okay, so after I've done that, whilst I'm still in sketch view, I can now create a fillet. So I'm going to fillet all four corners by clicking them all one after another. And I can see just by comparing the image with, say, this one, I can see I've got a slightly larger radius. I'm going to take a bit of a guess for this and enter in a value of 10. Probably a little bit less. So I'm just going to guess around about 8. Okay, and then press green tick. So that is my initial sketch, and I'm going to go into isometric view. And you can see now that is how the phone would be projected once I've added the extrusion. So to add the extrusion, click on the extrusion tool up in the top corner. Then it'll ask me when the dialog box appears to select the appropriate face of the sketch. So I can do that two ways. I can either hover over the sketch here, or I think it's probably better practice to click on the sketch that I've just created and give it a depth of value 7.6. We'll be particular with this one. 7.6 and green tick. Okay, now we're just going to make a prototype or a mock-up just to get a visualization of this. If I was drawing it completely accurately, I would draw all of the parts separately. So when I'm talking about the parts, I would draw the screen, I would draw the buttons, I would draw the aluminium front and back all as separate parts. But for this, just to get a simple idea of what the phone might look like, I'm just going to very simply make a mock-up as a single part, almost like a block of foam if you were chiseling it out of a block of foam or a piece of wood. So if I look at the sides of the iPhone 5, you'll see this little detail here. Now this is actually a chamfer. So in one of the previous tutorials, I showed you how to add a chamfer. So it's the chamfer button at the top. And I can do this in one action where I select the front. And then right mouse button to rotate the model. And I'm going to click on the back face. Now you can see that initially it showed the chamfer, and because I added a second chamfer, it's now failing to resolve. So I'm just going to zoom in to show you. And that's because I've added a distance or a chamfer that's too large. So if I reduce that down to 2, that's approximately almost cutting it into thirds. So if you remember, I had a thickness of 7.6. So 2 roughly thirds. Well, the chamfer on the iPhone 5 isn't quite that deep. So let's try 1. And that's more representative. So I can press green tick or I can press enter to select. And again, I'm going to go back and view as isometric. So if I refer to the image of the iPhone, I'm just going to very quickly make this little button, a home button. So I'm going to select my front face of the object this time, so not one of the planes, the front face of the object. Click Sketch and view it from front. And you can position now, notice that snap, as we've detailed previously. Snap, draw a circle, approximately the same dimensions as the home button. And then I can use the dimension tool. Again, as I've said, don't just leave it as a random number. Try and control it where you can. So I'm going to bring that down to, let's leave it at 11. And because I snapped it to the center, what I'm going to do to lock that circle in place, currently it can still move up and down along this axis. So I'm going to select dimension, center of the circle, to the outer edge of the phone. And I'm going to give that a dimension, 11.033, so let's change that to 11. And that just brings it down a little bit. So green tick. If I go back to isometric view and look at it as an isometric model, I've now got that sketch on the front face, but I haven't got anything else there. So what I'm going to do is cut a hole. So if I click on extrude, select remove, and look, this dialog box is actually helping me. So it says faces and sketch regions to extrude. So I'm going to select the sketch that I want to extrude, and you'll see now it's going in this direction. I can flick that direction by clicking on that arrow button, except I don't want to. It's actually in the right direction, but it's too deep. So I'm going to change that to 0.5 and press green tick. You'll now see I've got a very slight hole there by zooming in on the center mouse button. And if I have a look at the iPhone, perhaps in this view, you'll see that it's got a rather large fillet on that surface. But on this one, on the with the fingerprint sensor, I've actually got a chamfer on the inside. So let's create that chamfer first of all. You all know how to do the chamfers by now. So click on chamfer, click on, I'll be very careful here that I don't select the entire face. That's the entire face because you can see the orange going around the outline. I'm just going to select the outer ring. Now if you remember, I did a 0.5 distance going in there, and that's set to 5. So I need to make sure that my chamfer is less than 0.5. So if I change it to 0.25, I press green tick, you'll see that now has added a chamfer. So as a representative model, it's not far off what the phone looks like. looks like there. So next up, by the way, feel free to pause this at any point. I'm going to now do a series of holes down at the bottom to represent some speaker holes. And at this point, I'm going to use a little bit of creative license. I'm not going to do it exactly the same, just to save switching back and forth, but feel free to make an accurate model. Now, as I've rotated it, I'm going to create a new sketch face. So if I click on sketch, select the bottom of my mobile phone, and I'm now going to use a center point circle just to create a single hole, and I'm going to create another one just below it. And because I want these both to be the same, I'm going to give these both dimensions of, let's set them as 2. Now you'll see that when I've drawn one thing, and if the second thing that I've drawn hasn't been dimensioned, when I dimension the first one, the second object actually reduces by the same amount. So I'll just show you that one more time. So if I just press Ctrl Z, which allows me to step backwards, if I change this to 2, you'll notice the bottom circle, when I press enter, shrinks by the same amount. So if I press enter, there you go, you can see it just shrunk slightly. Well, the second circle I want to be the same dimension, so I'm going to change that. Whoops. So escape dimension. Right click to escape dimension, that was a mistake by me. So dimension tool, outer part of the circle, drag it away, set a dimension of 2. Now currently these two circles aren't in line, so I'm going to set 2 distances, one from the center of the circle to the top face. So I set that to, let's say 2.3, and I'm going to set the bottom one, center point circle to the outer edge, 2.3. And there's one dimension that both these circles are missing now. Currently these circles can move in the horizontal axis, so I need to lock it. Center of the circle to the outer edge. I could have done the opposite side, but this edge is closer. So if I set that to 10, and do the same now for this circle, outer edge to the outer edge, and set that to 10 as well. So now I've got 2 identical circles, and I've controlled all of the spacings of these. So if I wanted these to get closer together, I can increase these values. Okay, so there's more than one way that you can do anything. I could now draw these circles several times, but I'm going to show you a little tool called the linear pattern tool. So I'm still in the same sketch. I haven't come out of it. I haven't pressed my green tick. So if I select linear pattern, I now select the objects that I want to pattern. So I've selected those 2 circles, and you can just see over on the right hand side it's created these 2 circles here. It's given a distance of 25, and it said that I want to reproduce this 3 times. Well, let's first of all bring that distance right down to 5 and see what it looks like. So I've got 5 distance between. I think we can go down a little bit more again. So if I change that to 3, see what it looks like. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. And I can increase the value of how many times I want to duplicate or how many times I want it to pattern by pressing a number in there. So right click, escape linear pattern. No, wrong button. Even I get it wrong. So let's just try that again. Practice, look. So linear pattern, select the 2 circles, bring that distance down. I think we said 3. Change the amount to 5, press enter, and actually look, it shows me on the icon. If I want to accept that, I can just left click. So that's what I should have done the first time. So I'm done with that sketch now. So if I press green tick, you'll see, I'll just rotate it up slightly, you'll see that I've just got those series of circles. So you might have guessed what the next step is. I can now extrude, and then go to remove. Again, use the dialog box to help you. Faces and sketch regions to extrude. There you go. There's that sketch. And because these holes only tend to go in a small distance, let's just change that to 5, I think. Green tick. And now my phone, by zooming out, scrolling back on the mouse button, I've now got a series of speaker holes. Okay, so if I have a look at that in isometric view, there's a couple of little things that I'm missing. I think you can do a button up there yourselves. It's a very similar process to how I did these holes, but instead of being removes, you click on add. So you're adding, draw your sketch there and add that. Similarly with this little camera bump on the speaker, you can add those quite simply. So by viewing in isometric, that's tends to be how you present a CAD model. If I wanted to make it look a little bit more realistic, there's a feature that I can click on here where I go to turn perspective on. So perspective, as you should have learned earlier, perhaps in your schools, is where you get 2 points going to a vanishing point. So that is how the product would look in real life. If I positioned the camera up in the top right hand corner of the phone of the model that I've made, that's how it would appear. If I laid it flat on a table, like so, that's how it would appear. Now it's quite a nice thing to do where you maybe do print screens, and this is how you could then present your CAD models. So have a go at maybe producing the iPhone 5, or if you're feeling a little bit more ambitious, actually it's probably just as easy to create the very latest iPhone, because it tends to just be square shapes or rectangular shapes with fillets and chamfers and holes and extrusions that are added to the surface. So have a go and maybe add some comments down below of how you've gone on.